Hi, and welcome to When I Grow Up, the podcast dedicated to uncovering and celebrating unique paths to fulfillment and joy in our work lives. Today, I'm chatting to Jasmijn Kok. Jasmijn is a friend that I met when we moved to Amsterdam about 7 years ago, and I've always just been so inspired by this woman. What I find really interesting about her story is that she and her sister did babysitting when they were about 16, and like many of us, I'm sure, they actually took that idea and built it into a platform that now does everything from babysitting, au pair, and more. And she'll tell us a little bit more about that today. Go through everything from authenticity, not being boxed in by your strengths. We reflect on intuition, how to recognize it, how to listen to it, how to act on it. We also go a little bit back in time and unpack her decision to study architecture earlier on, and then subsequently, after a few years, her decision to leave that industry and build the business full-time with her sister. Jasmijn, welcome to When I Grow Up. It's so fantastic to have you on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me, Nicolette. I'm looking forward.
One of the first things that just came into my mind that I really want to just learn from you about is, I think so many of us know people, or maybe, when we were younger, did babysitting, but not a lot of us goes like, this is actually a fantastic business idea. Let's build this into a company that's operating in multiple markets and just, fantastic. And so I love that vision and kind of like what you and your sister have built. And so I'm really curious about, your upbringing. What did your parents do? Where did you grow up? What were some of the ideas, about career that you had at a young age?
So my mother is from Iran and my father is Dutch. I grew up in the Netherlands in a small university town called Delft. And I do think that they are the reason that we now started the business, to right away answer your question a bit, because they're both entrepreneurs. They had their own businesses. And when we started doing this babysitting, we noticed, whoa, there's a really big demand. And we started asking our friends for the nights that we couldn't babysit. And actually, our father, I think, then said, okay, you're arranging a lot. Maybe you could use some technology to make it better. So he was the one that helped us to build our very first platform. It was just a calendar that we misused in a way. So we used it in a different way so that our babysitting friends could sign up on that. And then actually, we really didn't intend to start a business. It just happened that then these girls, they went to study in different cities and they started to use the system in their university towns, where they had a lot of contacts with other girls that wanted to babysit, and there were parents that found them. So by accident, it just started growing and growing. And before we knew it, it was 30, I think we had 35 franchise girls at a certain point through different cities in the Netherlands.
When you say before we knew it, like how long was that, like since you started until?
I think we were 16 when it started, and this was in university. So this did take maybe like 6 years or so, just to start really small in our small Delft city. And then to 35, I think it took like 6 years.
I love that story. You then still went to university and studied, something different. How did you make a decision about what you wanted to study?
I made a whole list of about, I think, 25. And then I started to take out the ones that I didn't like as much. And in the end, I think there were 2 left. It was either to become a doctor. I was quite specific, a gynecologist to be precise, or an architect. And then I realized to be a doctor, you have to work a lot in the hospitals and you have to be really precise. If you make a mistake, it could cost a life. And I did realize my strengths was more in starting up new things, not per se in detailed stuff. And I thought the risk of human life was a bit too much for me. So I'd rather just choose something that made me happy and could use my project starting skills.
So then you landed on architecture, and you were still running the business then while you were studying, yeah? And then you went, if I'm correct, after you studied, did you go into architecture immediately then, following your studies?
Yeah, I think I was brought up with this mindset from my mother, like you have to just follow your career, you have to be good at school, and then you buy a house and you find a husband and you get babies. That was actually how I was brought up. So I did start working as an architect, and then 3 years in, I realized I wasn't that happy at all. It took a lot of courage, to quit that job because it's, certainty and it's safe, to start doing my business. But I'm so happy because, yeah, if you listen to what you really want to do in life, I think you can become happy.
It's like always this fight between like listening to your intuition and what you know is right for you versus like all these voices of like what you think you should do because that's what you see other people do or what they tell you to do. Yeah.
And how do you do that? Because it's like you said, it's super hard because, yeah, there is these thoughts put in your head by society, by your parents. How do you get to your core? Or how do you do that?
I think for me, the biggest like insight was that your intuition is like the ultimate knowledge. I think in the past, I thought that that gut feeling that you get is like one data point. You've got your knowledge, you've got what people do, you've got what you studied, you've got your gut feeling, you've got what your friends say. It's all kind of like on the same level, and you have to balance out like the different things between that. But I think what I've learned for myself, or how I make sense of it for myself, is that your gut feeling is actually taking all of this information and it's processing it and it's telling you what to do. And so I
Yeah.
think that's what it comes down to for these days is like actually listening. Like if I have a feeling about a situation or anything, that I want to do a project or whatever, like what is my gut feeling telling me and actually taking it seriously and doing what it says.
There was this one guy, I actually used to babysit for him. If you want to do networking, babysitting is quite nice because you meet a lot of people that are busy in building their career. Anyhow, he told me that whenever he needed to make a big life decision, he would go out into the woods for 2 days, no phone, nothing, and just walk. Just walk to try and get this intuition to speak to him. I do notice that when it's quiet, when you're sitting in the train, you're not doing anything, those are the moments when it comes to you more clearly, I think. For me, it was when I turned 30 that it became suddenly easier to listen to the intuition, and before it was just rational. I don't know how that was for you.
I think for me, the thing was it was very security related as well. Of course, there's a huge privilege in being able to make decisions in your career based on your intuition, what's right for you. Most people don't have that choice. They have to do a job, earn an income, provide for their family. And when I got out of that scarcity mindset, when we got the Dutch passport, when we, were financially more secure in our relationship, more, like also over time. And I think maybe that's the 30 thing. You get to know yourself better. You feel more confident about who you are. And, you feel like, yeah, just more comfortable in your own skin. I think then when you have that, now I have all these things, like I've got all the stability and
Yeah.
security in my life and I feel it in my body. It's not just that I know I have it. And, now I can actually go to that next level and ask myself what I want, what's kind of like that more deeper, like self-actualization questions. So I think time, definitely you're right. I think like once you pass that 30 mark and the older that you get, like you get more confident with it. But I do think that there is a certain amount of kind of security you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be
Very
able.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, so maybe for you, like, because then I can flip the question around and ask for you about a kind of one of those brave moments, because you said you did architecture for a few years, and then you actually made the decision to go full time into the business, which I was relating now to that security point, because of course the business got to a certain level where you could see that it was viable, or it could be viable if you, invest your time and your effort into it. So how did you make that decision? And yeah, maybe just reflecting a little bit on what it's been like.
Well, it came together with the business in the sense that we needed a new platform. We thought, okay, it's working, it's cool, but we really need to build a better platform. So we needed 100,000 euros. And I just thought about my future, and I thought, as an architect, I do love the work. I still love the agency where I worked, but it would be like maybe 5 years more of junior architect work before I could do something that I really loved. And the other option was to take a risk. And what was the worst thing that could happen? I didn't have any children. I didn't have high costs. There was not much risk. We also got a call at that moment from Dragon's Den, which is this TV show, to pitch in the studio. if you want to pitch for this TV show, you can't be working as an architect still and then expect people to invest in your company. So in order to achieve the goal of this investment, I had to quit also. So things came together.
I remember that show. I remember we watched you and you absolutely nailed it. Can I ask you a question about risk? Because you described your situation and then, leaving architecture where you had a good job and, it was a promising career. Some people might perceive the risk to be that now I give that career up and now I go try and do my own thing. What if it fails? Can I then go back after 1 year, 5 year, 10 years of running a business to architecture? Like, did you ever have that kind of like fight for yourself, or did you not perceive that to be a risk?
Ooh. I do remember myself standing in the kitchen of my parents. Obviously, my mom thought, okay, I did my job. They have a good university study. They have good jobs. I don't have to worry about them anymore. And I came in and I said, I'm going to quit. And then she said, like, no, why are you going to do that? Oh no, you had everything arranged. And I remember saying to her, yes, but I'm the one that has to go into that office every day at 9, looking at the clock until I can go home at 5. And I'm not doing that anymore. I think if you feel like that, like you're not happy with what you're doing, it makes the choice a lot easier. And of course, I did like the job, but it wasn't what I meant for in this world. And I felt that so strongly at that moment. It took me 3 years, it took me a long time, but I got there in the end. And that helped me to not be afraid of the risk because I felt so clearly that it wasn't for me.
That strong, like, this is not for me feeling, like this is not what I've meant for in the world. I think, unfortunately, we see so many people that kind of accept that as that is the way it has to be. Like, I have no choice. Like, this is what work is. I go in every day. I look at the clock. I can't wait for Friday. Sunday, you like in a state because it's almost Monday. And so many people just accept that that's the norm. And so it's like so inspiring to hear that you actually 3 years, maybe feels like a long time at the time, but, if you ever, going to live to 100 or whatever, it's a very short time. And so like, yeah, good on you for making that decision.
How did you make these moments? For example, the one that you are now traveling the country, how did you make that decision, right? It's crazy.
What happened for us is, again, like I was saying, like, that security was so important throughout our career. Like when we first moved to South Africa to Europe, we were on a visa. The visa is tied to a job. Same thing when we came to Australia. So it's been almost like, for me, maybe 14 years, if I count also Belgium and France, in that my job and my reason for, or rather my reason for being in a country, or my right to be in a country, was tied to a job. So I didn't have much the luxury, although I really wanted to. I'm also like a more creative entrepreneurial person. I couldn't really listen to that side of myself because I just had to be head down, do the work. Like, you need to do really well at this job because this is how you can stay in the country. And so I was kind of fighting between like what I felt inside and also having that feeling of you saying, like, looking at the clock. I mean, I did interesting work with lovely people, but I felt this thing as well inside that this wasn't, what I'm meant to be doing. Or this is not the most authentic like expression of myself and what I could give to the world. When we came over to Australia, Jeremy had his project, he did that, and went really well, wrapped that up at some point towards the end of last year. And I actually quit my job in consulting in like more the start of last year. I was like, this is it for me, like with at least for the time being. I should never say never. So by the end of last year, when Jeremy's project finished, I said to him, this is something that I've wanted to do actually for a long time. Now that we actually have the luxury to make that decision, let's step away from it. And the reason I felt that it was super important to do this trip, like I just also had that intuition and that vision, was if you want to make such a huge shift, from working 9 to 5, having that security of a big salary coming in each month and, kind of that trajectory, if you want to change from that path, for me, it felt like we had to get into a completely different environment. Like, because there's so much like conditioning and messages that you have to undo. And so I felt really strongly taking that time off, just traveling, being on an adventure. And it's been amazing how it's like unlocked like different parts of our brains and our creativity.
That's so brave and so cool. And I really admire you for doing this. I really do. It's how did you get the guts to do it? Where is it coming from? It's like crazy. Okay, yeah, I'm quitting my job. let's buy a caravan and go drive.
I don't know how to answer that question. I somehow have this thing, and I think it's a bit the same for both of us, that on the micro, I can be quite stressed, like about things like, how did that conversation go? Did I say the wrong thing? Like, did I embarrass myself? Like on that type of smaller things, like I can like really like think. But when it comes to the big decisions, like, moving country, changing careers, I just somehow like find that very exhilarating. Like I love it. Like it's the best thing. Like whenever someone tells me they've quit their job, I'm like, good on you. Because exactly, it's that thing of like, I realize that when you're in that situation and you want to make a big change, you're telling yourself, this is not for me, or kind of this part of my journey is done. It's now on to the next thing. Like there's something more that I want from life or from a next experience. And I find that super exciting. I don't find that scary at all.
Yeah, and then it's probably part of you. It's just part of who you are.
Just like kind of a reflection for you on the last, let's say, 10 years or so of building your company. What goes into building a business?
Yes. So like I said, we did not intend to start a business, but it just happened because there was a demand for it. And the demand comes from parents that are looking for time, basically. Time to enjoy, to sport, to do their careers. And for me and for my sister as well, a core value in life is freedom. Anyhow, what we do is we help parents with their childcare, with babysitting and au pair. And these au pairs are people from all over the world that come and live with the family. And we built a platform with a matching algorithm that allows families and au pairs to find each other. Babysitting is what we started off with, but just to be honest, the au pair is just growing so much faster, and it has a better business model for us, which is why we are now scaling mainly with au pair. We do intend to continue on the babysitting, but it's just low margins and it's harder to scale it. So that in a nutshell, I suppose.
The thing about the time is it's not only about the physical having the time, but what that actually gives parents. And so many times I speak to people or coach with people, and they have kids, and it's really tough, like the expectations of parents in the workplace. And I mean, being a parent this day, I'm like looking at what my friends do and I admire them so much, but it really is a tough gig. Like it's actually borderline, like the expectation is too much. And so in the career, like that becomes really challenging as well. I don't speak from own experience, but just from what I've observed. And so I think, as you're not just considering it about babysitting, you're actually thinking about what the value is that you're going to bring. Can you say something a bit more about what you've seen in that space and kind of that purpose of your business?
What we noticed is that we are solving a really big problem. And it's what you said, it's almost impossible how society nowadays thinks of career in children. And to be honest, I wouldn't know how to do it. I don't have kids yet. I do get why the Alpa product is now growing so much, because there you get 30 hours extra in a week because somebody is helping you with 30 hours. And honestly, I don't know how people do it.
You're building the business with your sister. It's been it's about 10 years ish. No, it's more than 10 years because you started when you were 16. So it's like 15 years more.
Yeah, but I would say that for being an entrepreneur, I would say it's about 4 years now that when we started and started working fully in the business up until now. And I think it's been such a growth path from taking small risks, from the type of business decisions that you make, from the type of company that you have, up because we started without employees, of course, and then you work with these franchises, which requires some type of contract and communication skill, and then it develops to your first employees, and now we're with, I think, 30, 35 or something like this, and we're looking into data and building the platform, and it's very different and it's very exciting. And that's what I love about my job, because everything is all the time changing, so you keep learning all the time. And I feel so much more comfortable now, because in the beginning everything is scary, and now I'm so much used to taking some risk, to making decisions, to being okay with how things are going. So on the one hand, things are new, and on the other hand, I feel super much more comfortable with the role of being entrepreneur.
Can you say, I mean, you did chat a little bit about it now, but like over the last like few years, like how you changed as a leader?
In the beginning, we made all the decisions, and we were very involved in everything. And I notice now we're on this tipping point of startup to skill up, where you go from asking me if you want to know something, if you can do something, to we're so big actually now that we need a lot of processes and projects and planning, and it needs to be more structured, and there needs to be goals, and the goals need to be clear, and the vision needs to be clear, because we're not so much involved anymore. And this is a really interesting phase. It's not per se something that fits with my strength, because I do like to just do this and do this and then start this. But now we have to be like rigorous, and but also that is nice to focus on that side for a while. So I would say that it's an interesting phase now to make it scalable in the sense of writing everything down, but it's also super challenging.
Yeah, as you were just like chatting through that, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, like it's a very different job. It requires very different leadership, I can imagine. How do you think about that for the future? Like, do you just mature with the business, or how do you bring still that entrepreneurial side of yourself into it?
I think we will mature like this with the business, and I think we will need to hire people that are good at the stuff that we're not good at, because we didn't have any money for that earlier. And now as the business is developed, a better product market fit, we know how to scale it a bit better, we have the breathing space. So also when I would, for example, quit this business, I wouldn't really per se like to start a new one, because that early stage is just, you have to do everything, also the things that you're not good at. And now at least we can hire someone who can help with this.
On that note, I'm wondering with you've obviously built this business with your sister and your twin, in fact. I mean, obviously there's a lot of family businesses out there, but there's also kind of people that say don't go into business with family, it's kind of these two opposing forces. But you of course come from a more entrepreneurial family, so it's a bit more normalized in that sense. But what was that experience like, with your sister? How do you play to your different strengths? What are your strengths? How does she augment you?
Yeah, about doing business with family, she is getting married to someone who works in our business as well. So for us, everybody is saying, oh, don't do it. Don't be friends with your colleagues. Don't live together with your colleagues. Don't marry your colleagues. But for us, business is just part of life. It's not like life and work. It's all intertwined. So it sort of makes sense that she's marrying somebody who's in the business. And maybe it doesn't work out, maybe he finds another job. But for me, that's never been a reason not to, be friends with a colleague or marry them. I don't think that's how it works. And then about the strengths, I think we're twins, right? So we're identical in DNA. So that's super interesting. And I think because we grew up together, that we developed in different ways. So she became more I'm not looking at the numbers, I'm just gonna think on the future and make tough decisions to get there. And I went into, oh, but she's not taking any notice of the runway or the money, so I have to focus a lot on that. And I became this really rigid person. And to be honest, we're now working also with coaches to get that a bit more balanced. So that's an interesting process for sure.
Oh my God, I so resonate with that. That makes me think of Jeremy and myself, because I'm also like the more kind of like forward thinking, I wouldn't say forward thinking, like that futuristic, like I kind of obsess about it, but then forget about the details. And although he can also have that kind of that visionary perspective, because I then don't focus on the details, he has to. And you kind of like become almost like a caricature of like your personality, because you have to like compensate for the other person. So like, although like I
Right?
know you and you are very strategic, but sometimes you have to go back and be like, okay, cool, like I hear that idea, but we don't have the money to go for it. And you become a bit more rigid than you would have been normally, I can imagine.
Yeah, but it's also dangerous because you lose yourself a little bit if you are too long. It counts for any role. If you're too long in a role that that requires you to do things that are not 100% your strengths, it's just draining you. And if you do it too long, then yeah, you might get exhausted and leave. It's important to align your strengths with the role that you're doing, I think.
And I think to have that conversation with yourself and with the others that you work with, and actually I saw this with some of the jobs that I have in the past, like I'm really good with the structure and the process of things. Like, and that's just my personality. Like if I need to do something, I always think through all the details. I've got it planned out well. And, I trust if I'm going to follow the plan, things are going to go fantastic. But I'm also very creative. I'm also very entrepreneurial. But I think if you had to ask some of the people that work with me in the past, they would be like, Nicolette is very boring and she's just going to be the person that's going to tell us like, how to do things right and how to do things better. And like, I think like in my last job or the one before, they were like, I bring all of the rigor, to the projects. And that is true. That is fair. That is what I did. But because no one else was, or very few other people were, I had to play that role. And like you say, it's dangerous because you kind of then become that person. And then there was other people in the company that's the innovators and the, like the big thinkers.
Yeah.
Whereas if we look at my personality, I know we both did that like Clifton strengths, and I'm just such a fan of it. My number one strength is futuristic. So like my number one strength as a person is that like innovative, creating pictures of the future. But when no one else is stepping in and being the boring, like person that makes things function, someone's got to do it, and then I do it, and then that becomes who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is happening to quite some people, and it's such a pity. I think, employers could really benefit from focusing on this. Acknowledging that this is happening and how you can empower your people to be in a role that fits with them.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. How do you do that in your company?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Also, because we do try that, we have specializations for our people that work with us, so they can grow and spend a couple of hours, say 8 hours in a week, in something that they find interesting. And it's a bit of a balance because we do need to run the company. It's like, oh, what do you want to do? And you could just do it because we have to make money as a company, of course. But it's nice to give some space to do the things that you're intrinsically motivated for. And this works really nice for us.
Do you kind of just let people choose themselves, or do you facilitate that process in any way? Like,
Yeah, well, with you, of course, we did the course, but it's been a while back. But I really like the the Cliff strength test. You did this one, session with us, which everybody loved, by the way. So actually, I want to do that again. And we do try to do these personality tests and other kind of tests, but I think we can do better, if I'm completely honest.
but I think sometimes, I think these tests are helpful. I think it's a data point. It gives you some information. But I think if you have the conversations and you're open to it, because I think what happens, and that's even more dangerous than a company kind of putting you in a box, it's you start believing that you are in that box. And, like then when you want to do something different or try something different, you think, but I'm like this person, like I can't do that. Like that person is so good at it. Like I always say things like, I don't know, like a different colleague is so good at marketing or so good at that. Or like the story I tell myself these days is I'm not a good writer. But then when I write things, like I just wrote an ad for a company I'm consulting with, and they just published it just like that, and I'm like, maybe I should stop telling myself like I'm not a good writer. But it's because I wasn't put in those roles before. Other people didn't see it. And I think one of the things that you have to realize, this was like a very kind of hard lesson for me, but I think it's really important for people to know, is that people are not going to see your full strengths. Like that is really something that relies on you, because when you are doing something, you know how it feels. Do you enjoy that? Do you feel like you're doing a good job? Do you feel energized by it? Or do you just hate it? But other people are saying, good job. Like don't trust other people to see, of course, again, get the information, get the data point, but more important is how do you feel and how do you know yourself? And I think that's something that all of us can get better at, actually.
I 100% agree.
What does the future hold for you?
Oh, I can be quick. World domination. No, we intend to scale to become market leader in Europe for sure. So we're just going to keep next year growing in the German and the UK markets, and then after that we want to open more. We are building a super cool innovation project called B2B, which will allow us to link in and lock in agencies from all over the world. They're super small. They don't have any technology, for example, in the Philippines or South Africa. And we built a platform that they can just create an account on and use our technology to upload their profiles. And I believe that this will unlock, a lot of scale and, growth for the future.
Absolutely love that. You girls are just so awesome. It's like this kind of problem that everyone has. I need someone to look after my kids. You go, I get that. That's the thing that happens. here is like why that is so important for people in the world. Now let's actually go build some kick-ass tech and platforms behind it to like help everyone do this better. I just absolutely love it. Well done. I think of that, like you just being so inspiring is like, if there's people out there like other women like us, that they're just going through their day-to-day lives, they see a problem they want to solve, think they can do this in a, through a business, but they might be in a full-time employment at the moment. What would you tell them? Like, what's your advice to them?
I would say solve it in a small way. See if that takes off. And that's hard because you have your day to day and then there's the project. But then if you love working on that project so much that you're doing it next to your job and it's actually starting to take off, then I think those are signs that you can actually start to invest a bit more. So yeah, just do the things that you love and then they will become bigger.
I think that's one of the things that I've learned as well, is that you can get so stuck on this idea in your head. And, I know people that every time you talk to them, they say, oh, I still have that idea. I want to do something about it. And it can be years that they have this idea and it starts feeling so big. But if you don't even have the interest to, in a small way, start experimenting with it, testing with it, trying to build a small prototype, yeah, that's the way to start. Like, do that first. Stop talking about it. Start trying it. And then from that momentum, you will learn. I mean, I'm also guilty of that. I'm not just talking about other people, but, you need to start somewhere. You need to build the momentum and actually see for yourself, was it just an idea? Or is it actually something that I'm really keen to build out into potential business and I'm willing to take risks for?
And of course, it's hard. So it's nice to have somebody cheering you on, saying, yeah, this is a good idea. Go try it. And it's okay to need a little push. It's okay that it doesn't come from your own willpower all the time. So talk to people that are encouraging you to follow your dreams.
Yeah, and pick those people like really well. You don't have to tell everyone. That's another hard lesson that I learned, because once, you tell everyone, I don't know if you found this in your business, actually, like this can also be a question. When we had the coffee shop, what we found is that every single person has an opinion. So like they will come to the coffee shop. Some people will say it's great. Other people will say your menu should be better. Other people will say you should do events. Other people will say you must do door-to-door delivery. It's just like every single person has an idea and they think it's the best idea ever. And it might be fabulous ideas, but there's also only that much that you can do. And it can be overwhelming that you start thinking like, oh, do we actually have a bad idea, or we're doing a bad job of this? And so I think it's great to talk to people, but also to know when to not listen to people.
Mm-hmm. Sure. No, 100%. And then I just, when it happens, when people have their ideas and think you should do it their way, I'm just thinking, okay, but they're just so enthusiastic about this energy and the business. They want to be part of it and they want to give their ideas. So I started to see it more like a compliment than as something I actually have to do with, something with. And sometimes there are great ideas. And sometimes you say, yeah. And then, of course, we tried it, didn't work, but you're not going to say that.
That's so beautiful. It's taking the intent behind it. They're trying to help you. They're a friend. They think you're doing something fantastic. Versus I always get a bit more like, okay, cool, nice idea. Okay, great. Go away. Let me do my thing here because I'm the one actually in this business. You have a much more
Exactly.
generous and a kind way to look at it.
Well, it
I'll take
took me
that.
some time to get there. It took me some time.
Well, we're almost getting to the end of our conversation, Jasmijn. I just wanted to check in with you whether there was any like kind of last reflections or insights from your side based on what we chatted about today.
No, I think what I took away from it is that it's good to sometimes just stop and think back at where am I now in life and what am I doing and how did I get here? What do I appreciate? And where do I want to move forward to? Because you're just so busy, like you said, living life. And I loved what you told me, I think before I started recording, that you were now in this bigger city in Perth, right? Coming from your journey, seeing people just being super stressed. Maybe you can tell the story a little bit, because for me, it was a reminder of live in the moment and look around you.
So, for context for everyone, we've been traveling around Australia for about almost 10 months now. And in that time, we actually only once went into CBD, which was like actually at the start of the trip last year, end of November, beginning December. Obviously, we were living in Sydney, and so we spent some time in the city. And then since then, we've actually just been really avoiding the cities or just going like through them quite fast, staying on the outskirts. And this is the first time now after about 10 months that we actually going into the CBD, walking around, having, a meal and seeing what's around us. And it's been such a bizarre experience because it feels a little bit like there's this matrix of everyone just, going to work, looking fancy, just like really, going like through their day busy and rushed. And here is me and Jeremy, like in our, like, I don't want to say our bush clothes, like a Australian bush, with our hats and our shorts and our, and we almost look bizarre. And like, it's like a weird, like where we stand outside of that corporate, like mulling and energy, which we were so a part of, like last year and the years before that. And it was just so interesting to see how, I think the big thing for me is there's this whole world outside of corporate. People are doing things, they're being successful, they're living their lives. And I somehow felt so stuck in that corporate space for so long. And it was actually really interesting to stand outside of it, quote unquote, and see that busyness and have those like kind of reflections back on, I didn't feel like my authentic self in that situation. And from a lot of the people walking around me, I could see that, there is that disconnect as well. Like there's a lot of just like not a lot of joy radiating from their faces. Anyway, all the reason why I feel so passionate about doing the work that I do and helping people, find meaningful careers and fulfillment and joy and just happiness. I guess that's what we're all working towards. To close us out, we're going to shoot with our rapid fire questions. The first one is, if you didn't have to work, what would you be doing with your time?
Reading and sporting.
Okay, second one. If you had to choose one of your past jobs for the rest of your life, which one would you choose?
The one I have now.
Third one. If you could get a do-over for one career decision, which one would it be?
Becoming an architect.
Fourth one. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of career advice, what would it be?
Listen to yourself.
And the last one, complete this sentence. When I grow up,
I want to be very careful with my time and deliberate with it.
Thank you, Jasmijn. This was a beautiful conversation. It's always so inspiring and just fun to talk to you.
No, thank you, Nicolette. I appreciate just your view on life. Really, thanks for the great talks.